They raised their wine glasses, calling it a family dinner. I sat there, blood still drying on my cheek, where my stepfather's ring had caught me, all because I'd asked about my own money. 2 days later, the check that was supposed to go to him arrived, but it came to me, and when I signed my name on that endorsement line, my hand didn't shake once, not even a little. My name is Rachel Holden, though I wasn't born with that last name. I'm 33 now, working as an internal auditor for West Ale Mutual Insurance. But sometimes when I'm alone in my office, I still catch myself looking over my shoulder. Old habits from a childhood spent walking on eggshells. I was 12 when my mother married Roy Holden. Before him, it was just Mom and me in our cramped apartment in Columbus, making ends meet with her waitressing job, and the occasional child support check that actually showed up. She was tired all the time, dark circles, permanent fixtures under her eyes, but she'd still manage to smile at me over our dinners of boxed mac and cheese. Roy changed everything. He swept into our lives with his construction supervisor salary and promises of stability. Mom's eyes lit up when he talked about his 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, the good schools nearby, the future he could provide. I remember the wedding, a small courthouse ceremony where Mom wore a borrowed dress and kept touching Roy's arm like she couldn't believe he was real. The house was nice. I'll give him that. Actual stairs leading to actual bedrooms, a backyard with a rusty swing set left by the previous owners. Roy had a daughter from his first marriage who visited every other weekend. And soon Mom was pregnant with my half-sister, the American dream. Right? A blended family in a house with a 2-car garage. But dreams have a way of curdling when you look too close. It started small. Roy would make comments about my expensive habits. Things like wanting name-brand sneakers instead of the knockoffs from discount stores, or asking for lunch money instead of packing sandwiches. Your mother and I are trying to build something here, he'd say, his voice carrying that particular weight that made my stomach clench. Everyone has to contribute. I was 13 when he first used the phrase that would haunt the next 2 decades of my life. Family responsibility. Mom had complications during her pregnancy with my half-sister Emma. Bed rest for the final trimester, which meant no waitressing, which meant no income from her side. Roy's solution was elegant in its cruelty. I would step up, babysitting his daughter during her visits, cleaning the house after school, preparing dinners when Mom couldn't get out of bed. You're the oldest, he'd say. Like, that explained everything. This is what family does. The thing about being 13 is that you don't have the vocabulary to explain why something feels wrong. You can't articulate the difference between helping out and being conscripted into servitude. You just know that your friends are at soccer practice, or the mall while you're scrubbing toilets and learning how to make meatloaf from a cookbook propped against the microwave. Emma was born in the spring, a squalling bundle of needs that somehow became my responsibility, too. Night feedings when Roy needed his sleep for work. Diaper changes while Mom recovered from her C-section. I'd rock my baby sister at 3 a.m., struggling to stay awake for my algebra test the next morning, and wonder if this was really what family meant. By 14, I'd learned the house rules. Roy's comfort came first, then Mom's recovery, then Emma's needs, then his daughter's wants during her visits. Somewhere at the bottom of that hierarchy, if there was time and energy and money left over, came me. You're so mature for your age. Relatives would coo at family gatherings, watching me balance Emma on my hip while setting the table. Such a big help to your parents. Parents, plural, as if Roy had earned that title through anything more than a legal document. The first time he called me ungrateful, I'd asked if I could join the school band. Clarinet rental was $40 a month. $40. He'd looked at me like I'd asked for a yacht. Do you know how many hours of overtime I work to keep this roof over your head? And you want to waste it on some noisemaker? Mom, folding laundry on the couch, had kept her eyes down. Maybe next year, honey, she'd murmured. But next year, I was 15, and by then I'd learned not to ask for anything at all. The adoption papers came out of nowhere. One evening at dinner, Roy announced that he wanted to make things official. Give me his last name. Make me a real part of the family. Mom's eyes had gone misty with happiness. Emma banged her spoon on her high chair, and I sat there staring at the legal documents he'd already had drawn up, feeling like I was watching my own identity get erased in real time. It's what's best for everyone, Roy said, his tone suggesting this wasn't a discussion for college applications, for insurance purposes. Plus, don't you want us all to have the same name? What I wanted was to keep my father's name, even if he'd been absent most of my life. What I wanted was to be asked, not told. What I wanted was for my mother to look at me, really see me, and understand that this felt like losing the last piece of who I'd been before Roy. But I was 15. And when you're 15 in a house where your protests are met with lectures about gratitude and family duty, you learn to swallow your wants like bitter pills. I signed the papers. Rachel Holden, the girl I'd been Rachel Morrison, disappeared into a filing cabinet at the county courthouse, and with her went any illusions I'd had about my place in this reconstituted family. The adoption wasn't just about names. It was about ownership. Roy now had legal claim to call me his daughter, to make decisions about my future, to point to those papers whenever I showed signs of rebellion, and remind me that he'd chosen to take me in. I didn't have to do this, became his favorite refrain. I could have just married your mother and left you as you were, but I made you mine. Mine, like I was property that had transferred titles. And so I became Rachel Holden, eldest daughter in a family that ran on my unpaid labor and unquestioning compliance. The girl who raised her sister, kept house for her stepfather, and learned to make herself smaller with each passing year. The girl who would spend the next 18 years paying for the crime of existing before Roy decided to play father. But even then, at 15, signing away my name with a shaky hand, some part of me was keeping score. Every slight, every demand, every moment of erasure, I remembered them all, filed them away like the receipts I'd later learned to keep in my accounting classes. Because the thing about emotional debts is that they accumulate interest. And one day, I promised myself, one day I'd call in the full balance. The first time Roy hit me, I was 16 and had asked for $20 for an AP exam fee. He didn't use his fist. Roy was too smart for that. Instead, he grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave bruises shaped like fingerprints, and shoved me against the kitchen counter. You think money grows on trees? His breath was hot against my face, smelling of the beer he'd been nursing since getting home from work. You want to take fancy classes? Find a way to pay for them yourself. Mom was in the living room, close enough to hear everything. The TV volume went up. That night, I filled out my first job application. The Dairy Queen off Route 23 wasn't hiring, but the manager took pity on the desperate girl who showed up 3 days in a row. I started the next weekend, Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sundays. Minimum wage minus taxes. My first paycheck was $67.43 for 2 weeks of sticky floors and soft serve burns. Roy was waiting when I got home with that check. Family contribution, he said, holding out his hand. Your mom's hours got cut at the restaurant. We all pitch in. I handed over $50. He took $60. The pattern established itself quickly: work, school, housework, Emma, sleep if there was time. My grades started slipping. Hard to maintain a 4.0 when you're closing the restaurant at midnight and opening your textbook at 1 o'clock in the morning. Teachers who'd once praised my potential started pulling me aside with concerned looks. Everything okay at home, Rachel? Everything was perfect. We lived in a nice house. My stepfather had adopted me. My mother was happy. What kind of ungrateful child would complain about contributing to such a loving family? I learned to lie with a smile that never quite reached my eyes. By senior year, I was working 30 hours a week and handing over most of my paychecks. College fund, Roy called it, though I never saw a bank statement. When I mentioned scholarships, he laughed. State school is good enough. Why waste money on some fancy degree? But I'd been talking to my guidance counselor in secret, filling out applications on the school computers during lunch. When the acceptance letter from Pinehurst University came, full academic scholarship, room and board included, I hid it in my locker for 3 days before finding the courage to bring it home. Full ride, I said at dinner, the envelope trembling in my hands. Everything's covered. Roy set down his fork slowly, deliberately. Everything. Tuition, housing, meal plan, even a book stipend. And who's going to watch Emma while you're playing college girl? Who's going to help your mother with the house? Emma was 4 by then, old enough for preschool, though Roy deemed it an unnecessary expense when I was available for free. Mom looked between us, her default expression of careful neutrality firmly in place. It's only 2 hours away, I said. I can come home weekends. The slap came fast, open-palmed across my cheek. Not hard enough to really hurt, just enough to shut me up. Ungrateful, he muttered, after everything we've done. But I went anyway. God help me. I packed my second-hand clothes in a garbage bag and got on that Greyhound bus with my face still stinging. Mom drove me to the station in silence, Emma sleeping in her car seat at the curb. She finally spoke. He just wants what's best for the family. And what about what's best for me? She looked tired then, older than her 38 years. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for the people we love. I wanted to ask her what she'd sacrificed. I wanted to ask if she remembered the girl she'd been before Roy, the one who'd laughed over mac and cheese and called me her sunshine. But the bus was loading, and some questions are too big for a Greyhound departure. College was a revelation. Not just the classes, though. Learning accounting principles felt like discovering a language I'd always been meant to speak, but the simple freedom of existing without constantly calculating the cost of my presence. I ate breakfast without anyone timing how long I took. I studied without interruption. I slept through the night without Emma crying or Roy's heavy footsteps in the hallway. For the first time since I was 12, I remembered what it felt like to just be. The call started the second week. Mom, tearful. Emma misses you so much. Roy's gruff. Your mother's struggling without your help. The guilt came in waves, threatening to drown me in my dorm room 200 miles from home. But my roommate, a girl from Chicago who'd never met a problem she couldn't talk through, saved me with simple logic. If they survived before you could help, they can survive now. Still, I went home that first weekend, and the next, and the next. Each visit was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Emma would cling to me, clearly coached to cry when I left. Mom would mention, oh so casually, how tired she was, how hard it was to manage everything. Roy would leave bills on the kitchen table where I couldn't miss them, read past due stamps like accusations. By October, I was sending half my work-study check home. By November, I'd picked up weekend shifts at a campus coffee shop specifically to have more to send. By December, when I should have been studying for finals, I was calculating how many hours I could work over winter break to help with their Christmas bills. Family responsibility, Roy reminded me when I came home for the holidays, handing me a list of Emma's presents that needed wrapping. Good to see college hasn't made you forget that. But college had done something else. It had shown me that other families didn't work like ours. My friends talked about parents who celebrated their achievements, who sent care packages during finals, who asked, "What do you need?" instead of telling them what they owed. Spring semester, I cut my visits to once a month. The phone calls increased proportionally. Guilt delivered in daily doses, but distance gave me something I'd never had before, perspective. And with perspective came the dangerous ability to see Roy not as the looming figure of my adolescence, but as what he really was, the small man who needed to control others to feel big. That summer, I didn't go home. I stayed on campus, taking summer classes and working full-time at an accounting firm that hired interns. The pay was good, better than anything I could make in my hometown. I sent money home, enough to quiet the phone calls, but not enough to satisfy Roy's growing demands. "You're different," Mom said during one of our increasingly rare conversations. "College is changing you." She was right. College was teaching me that I was more than the sum of my family's needs, that my dreams mattered, that the voice in my head saying, "You deserve better," wasn't selfishness. It was survival. But survival, I was learning, came with its own price. And back home, Roy was keeping his own ledger, tallying up every perceived slight, every boundary I tried to draw, every sign that his control was slipping. The real war was coming. I could feel it building like storm clouds on the horizon. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running for shelter. I was learning to stand my ground. 4 years at Pinehurst University taught me more than debits and credits. It taught me what normal felt like. My roommate Sarah would call her parents every Sunday, and they'd ask about her week, her classes. Her friends never once mentioning money or obligation down the hall. Marcus got care packages during finals with his mom's homemade cookies and notes saying, "Proud of you." When Alicia's car broke down junior year, her dad drove 3 hours just to help her deal with the mechanic. No guilt trips attached. "Your family sounds intense," Sarah said once after overhearing another phone call where Roy demanded I come home to help with taxes. "Do they always expect you to drop everything?" "Always." The word sat heavy in my chest, but distance was my salvation. 200 miles might as well have been 2,000 when it came to Roy's immediate reach. I could hang up the phone. I could claim exams, work schedules, campus obligations. I could breathe. The money never stopped flowing homeward. Though every paycheck from my campus jobs, from internships, from the tutoring I did on the side, I'd calculate what I absolutely needed to survive and send the rest. It was easier than the alternative, the crying calls from Mom about shut-off notices, the guilt-laden texts about Emma needing school supplies, the reminders of everything Roy had done for me. "You enabling them," Sarah said once, watching me transfer another $200 I couldn't afford to lose. "You know that, right?" I did know. But knowing and doing were different things, when you'd been programmed since childhood to equate your worth with your usefulness. Senior year brought recruitment season and a revelation. I was good at what I did. Really good. Firms were interested. Real firms with real salaries offering real futures. Westdale Mutual extended an offer, $65,000 starting, full benefits, signing bonus. I stared at the letter until the numbers blurred. "That's amazing," Sarah shrieked, dancing around our tiny shared room. "You're going to be making more than both my parents combined." The first person I should have called was Mom. Instead, I sat on that offer letter for 3 days, running calculations in my head. How much could I keep? How much would they expect? How long before Roy decided my success was somehow his achievement? When I finally called home, Roy answered. "About time. Your mother's been worried. I got a job offer." Silence. Then, "How much?" Not "congratulations," not "I'm proud of you." Just the only question that mattered in the Holden household. "It's in Columbus," I said, deflecting. I'd be moving back after graduation. Good. Emma misses you, and your mother needs help with the new medical bills. New medical bills. There were always new bills, new crises, new reasons why my money was already spoken for before I'd even earned it. I accepted the position at Westdale Mutual and started apartment hunting in Columbus. Nothing fancy, a studio in a decent neighborhood, close enough to work that I could walk and save on gas. When I signed the lease, my hands shook. My own space, my own name on a legal document that had nothing to do with Roy Holden. Graduation day came with all the pomp and circumstance universities love. I'd invited Mom and Emma, carefully timing the invitation for when Roy would be at work. They came, Mom looking older than her 42 years. Emma, at 8, already showing signs of the caretaker role I'd once filled. "I'm proud of you," Mom said quietly while Emma posed with my cap for photos. "First in the family to graduate college." "Dad says I don't need college," Emma piped up. "He says real work doesn't need a fancy degree." "Dad." The word hit like ice water. When had Roy become dad to my sister? When had she internalized his dismissal of education, of ambition, of anything beyond his narrow definition of value? I knelt down to Emma's level. "College is where you learn to build the life you want. Don't let anyone tell you what you need or don't need." Mom's hand tightened on Emma's shoulder, a warning. Even here, 200 miles from home, Roy's rules applied. The move back to Columbus was bittersweet. I loved my job. Loved the structure and logic of internal auditing. Loved having colleagues who valued my brain over my availability for unpaid labor, but being 2 hours from home instead of 4 meant the demands escalated. Sunday dinner, every week, family time. Roy's mandate, delivered through Mom like she was his secretary. I negotiated it down to twice a month, claiming work responsibilities that weren't entirely fictional. Those dinners were exercises in endurance. Roy pontificating about kids these days, while I cut Emma's meat and helped with her homework. Mom floating like a ghost between kitchen and table. Everyone pretending this was normal. The requests for money became demands. My raise at 6 months. They knew about it before I'd even updated my direct deposit tax refund. Roy had plans for it. Bonus for catching a significant error in an insurance claim ordered already earmarked for his truck repairs. I need to start saving. I tried once during a particularly aggressive cash grab. Retirement emergency fund. Family is your emergency fund, Roy shot back. We took care of you. Now you take care of us. That's how it works. But I'd seen how other families work now. I'd spent 4 years learning that love wasn't supposed to come with invoices. That support wasn't supposed to be transactional. That growing up didn't mean owing your childhood to the people who were supposed to nurture it for free. The breaking point came slowly. Then, all at once, Emma, now 10, called me crying because she'd been pulled from dance class. They couldn't afford it. But Roy had just bought a new fishing boat. Mom, diagnosed with hypertension, working double shifts while Roy cut back his hours because Rachel's doing well now. The discovery that the college fund Roy had taken from my teenage paychecks had never existed at all. "I'm implementing a budget," I announced at Sunday dinner. Spreadsheets laid out like battle plans. I can contribute $500 a month. That's it. Roy's face went through several colors. "You ungrateful." "I've run the numbers. In the past 6 years, I've given you over $40,000. That's not including the work I did as a teenager. The childcare, the housekeeping. $500 a month is generous." Generous. He stood, fists clenched. "I raised you." No, the word came out steady. Years of swallowed responses finally finding voice. You housed me. There's a difference. The backhand caught me across the cheekbone, hard enough to knock me sideways. Emma screamed. Mom stood frozen, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. Get out. Roy snarled. Don't come back until you remember what you owe this family. I left, but I took my spreadsheets with me. And for the first time since I was 16, I didn't send money that month. The calls started within a week. Mom crying, Emma confused, Roy leaving voicemails that alternated between threats and manipulation. But I'd learned something important at that dinner table, the blood still copper fresh in my mouth. They needed me, but I didn't need them. And that shift in power, that was worth more than all the money I'd ever sent home. It was freedom, finally within reach. If I could just find the courage to close my fist around it. 6 months into my job at Westdale Mutual, I made the mistake of mentioning my promotion during a mandatory Sunday dinner appearance. The slight salary bump meant nothing to my budget after rent and student loan payments. But Roy's eyes lit up like I'd announced a lottery win. Assistant manager, he repeated, rolling the title around like candy. Big shot now, huh? Must come with big shot money. It's a 2% raise, I said carefully. Mostly just a title change. But the seed was planted. Within a week, Mom called about Emma needing braces. The week after, Roy's truck needed transmission work. Always something urgent. Always something that couldn't wait. Always something that required just a little more than I'd budgeted to send. Family helps family, became Mom's new refrain, parroted so perfectly I could hear Roy's coaching behind every word. The breaking point started with a car. Emma was turning 16 and Roy decided she needed reliable transportation for a part-time job at the grocery store. Reasonable enough, except his definition of reliable was a brand new Honda Civic with all the upgrades. You'll co-sign, he informed me over dinner, sliding the paperwork across the table like a done deal. Your credit's better than ours. I stared at the papers. Monthly payment, $425. Insurance another $200 for a teenager, who worked 10 hours a week at minimum wage. I can't afford it. You're not paying for it, Roy interrupted. Just co-signing. Emma will make the payments. Mom nodded eagerly. It's perfect. You're helping your sister establish credit. But I'd learned to read the fine print in everything now, not just insurance documents. Emma making payments meant Roy controlling Emma's paycheck, which meant the payments coming from wherever Roy decided, which meant, inevitably, coming from me. I'll help her find a reliable used car, I offered. Something under $5,000. I can help with the down payment. Roy's face darkened. Your sister deserves better than some junker. A 2018 Corolla isn't a junker. Don't be selfish, Rachel. Mom's disappointment was a weapon she'd learned to wield with surgical precision. After everything we've done for you, everything they'd done, the ledger I'd been keeping mentally suddenly felt very real, very heavy. But I signed the papers anyway because Emma was looking at me with hope in her eyes, and I couldn't be the reason it dimmed. 3 months later, the first missed payment notice arrived. Temporary cash flow issue, Roy explained when I confronted him. Hours got cut at the construction site. Economy's tough. I made the payment, and the next one, and the next. It's just until things pick up, Mom promised during one of her increasingly desperate phone calls. You know, we're good for it. But I was learning that the definition of good for it meant I was good for it, always. And forever. The car situation spiraled exactly as I'd predicted. Emma's paychecks disappeared into the family fund. Roy's work hours mysteriously decreased as my financial support increased. And that reliable Honda became one more chain, binding me to their dysfunction. 6 months of double payments later, I did something I should have done years ago. I hired a lawyer. "You need to get your name off that loan," she advised, reviewing the mess I'd laid out. "And start documenting everything, every payment, every request, every threat." Threat seemed like a strong word until Roy showed up at my office. "Heard you've been asking questions about the car loan," he said, planting himself in my cubicle like he owned it. "That's family business. We don't air family business." My colleagues were staring. Security was just a phone call away, but 20 years of conditioning is hard to break, and I found myself following him to the parking garage instead. "You're embarrassing your mother," he said once we were alone. "Acting like we are some kind of criminals. We're your family." "Family doesn't forge signatures on payment checks," I said quietly. His face went very still. "What did you say?" I'd found out that morning. 3 months of payments I'd made had been cashed, but never applied to the loan. A little digging revealed they'd been endorsed and deposited into Roy's personal account. "That's fraud," I continued, my voice steadier than my hands. "Federal fraud, actually, since they were mailed across state lines." The punch came fast, aimed at my stomach where it wouldn't show, but I'd been expecting it this time. I'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders. I stepped back, and his fist hit air. "You ungrateful little, I'm done." 2 words, 2 syllables, 20 years in the making. "You're done when I say you're done," Roy snarled. "You owe us." "I owe you nothing." The words tasted like freedom. "I've paid and paid and paid for the crime of existing before you decided to play father. For the sin of needing food and shelter and clothes. For the audacity of wanting an education, a future, a life beyond servicing your needs. I'll tell everyone what kind of person you really are, abandoning your family, leaving your sick mother. Mom's hypertension is managed. I've seen the pharmacy receipts I pay for. Emma's doing well in school when she's not being pulled into your schemes. The only sickness in that house is you." He stepped forward. I stepped back, hand on my phone. "Call the police." I said, "Please, I'd love to explain why you're here, why you've been stealing from me, why there are bruises on my arms from the last time you disagreed with my financial boundaries." For the first time in my life, I watched Roy Halden look uncertain. He'd ruled through fear and obligation for so long. He'd forgotten what happened when someone stopped being afraid. "This isn't over," he finally said. "Yes, it is." I went back to my office, filed a security report, and spent my lunch break at the bank, removing myself from every account that could possibly be linked to them. The car loan would take lawyers and time, but I was finally ready to fight. That night, I got 17 calls. Mom, Roy, Emma, numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail, and spent the evening doing something revolutionary. I cooked dinner for one, ate it in peaceful silence, and didn't calculate how much of my grocery budget I should have sent home instead. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Emma, sent from her school account. "Dad says you hate us now. Do you hate me?" I stared at those words for a long time before typing back, "I love you. Loving you doesn't mean letting Dad hurt me anymore. When you're older, if you need help getting free, I'll be here." She didn't respond, but she didn't block me either. And that tiny crack in Roy's control, that was the beginning of everything. The calls never stopped. They just got more creative. Mom discovered text messaging with the fervor of a televangelist finding God. Every morning brought a new biblical quote about honoring their father and mother, followed by a utility bill photo. Roy preferred voicemails after midnight, his words slurred just enough to claim he didn't remember threatening to show up at my work again. Emma sent TikToks about family bonds and forgiveness, each one a tiny dagger wrapped in a dance trend. But I was done dancing. My lawyer helped me file paperwork to get my name off the car loan, though it would take months to resolve. The fraud charges, I could press those 3 forged checks sat in my safety deposit box like loaded weapons. But I held off, still clinging to some misguided hope that they'd back down without the nuclear option. They didn't. Instead, they escalated. Mom started showing up at my apartment building, sitting in the lobby like a grieving widow until security asked her to leave. Roy sent certified letters full of itemized bills from my teenage years, as if demanding retroactive payment for raising me. Emma, poor Emma, caught in the middle, left voicemails crying about how everyone at school knew her sister had abandoned the family. You could end this, my co-worker Janet said after finding me stress-eating lunch in the supply closet. Just give them what they want. They want everything, I said through a mouthful of gas station sushi. They always have. The medical emergency scam started 2 months into our Cold War. Mom called from a number I didn't recognize, sobbing about chest pains, emergency rooms, tests they couldn't afford. My finger hovered over the callback button for exactly 3 seconds before I remembered I'd seen this episode before. Sure enough, a quick call to the hospital revealed no patient by her name. She could have used a fake name, Roy argued when I confronted him at the grocery store, the only neutral ground left. You didn't even check. Your mother could have died. Mom posted a Facebook check-in at the casino the same night she was supposedly in the ER. His face cycled through emotions, surprised that I'd thought to check, anger at being caught, finally settling on the old standard rage. You think you're so smart, he said, voice low enough that the other shoppers wouldn't hear, with your fancy job and your apartment. But you're nothing without us. We made you. No, I said, dropping my basket and walking away. You made me tired. The bills kept coming. Electric, water, mortgage, credit cards I'd never known existed. Photos of past due notices with increasingly dire warnings. Mom's texts evolved from Bible verses to medical symptoms, dizzy spells, blurred vision, numbness in her extremities. Each one a manipulation calibrated to hit where I was softest. I started keeping a spreadsheet, not of what I owed, I'd finally accepted that number was 0, but of what I'd already paid. Every check, every transfer, every cash handout from the moment I'd started working at 15. The total made me nauseous. $114,000. Over 12 years, I'd handed over $114,000 to people who called me selfish for keeping grocery money, who'd trained me to apologize for existing, who'd convinced me that love came with a price tag I'd never finish paying. That's a house, Janet said when I showed her the final tally. You could have bought a house. Instead, I'd bought their silence, one payment at a time, except the price kept going up, and the silence never lasted. The breaking point came, as they always do, over something small. Emma's school called. She'd listed me as her emergency contact without telling Roy. And there had been an incident, not physical, she was fine, but she'd broken down crying in career counseling when asked about college plans. She says her father told her college is a waste, the counselor explained, that she should focus on getting a job to help support the family. But her grades are excellent. She could qualify for scholarships just like you did. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes after the call, remembering another girl with excellent grades who'd almost let a small man steal her future. I'll talk to her, I promised. But Roy had other plans. He was waiting at my apartment that night, having charmed or threatened his way past the security door. Mom flanked him. Emma behind them both, looking miserable. Family meeting, he announced, pushing past me into my home, my space, my sanctuary. They arranged themselves on my second-hand couch like they owned it. Roy spreading his legs wide. Mom perched beside him. Emma curled into the corner like she wanted to disappear. Emma tells us you've been filling her head with college nonsense. Roy started. Her counselor called me. Her counselor should mind their own business, just like you should. Emma wouldn't meet my eyes. I wondered what they'd threatened her with to get her here, to participate in this ambush. We need to discuss the family finances. Mom jumped in, pulling out a folder I recognized too well. Things have gotten tight. No. Such a simple word. 2 letters, 1 syllable, but it sucked all the air from the room. No. Roy stood slowly, intimidation his favorite tool. No isn't an option. Your family. I'm your ATM, I corrected. Have been since I was 15. But the account's closed. After everything we've done. Everything you've done, I laughed, sharp and bitter. You mean taking my paychecks? Forging my signature, beating me when I asked questions. Which part should I be grateful for? Mom gasped. Rachel, he never, February 15th, 2018. Bruised ribs because I asked about my tax refund. June 3rd, 2019. Black I explained away as clumsiness. November 22nd, 2020. Thanksgiving dinner ended with a split lip, because I mentioned saving for retirement. I'd kept records of those, too. Photos in a cloud account they'd never know about. Medical records from urgent care visits. A paper trail of pain. And they thought I'd been too broken to build. You're lying, Mom whispered, but her eyes said she knew better. December 8th, 2021. Concussion from being shoved into a doorframe. You drove me to the hospital. Mom told them I fell. Held my hand while they did the CT scan and promised things would get better. Emma was crying silently, tears cutting tracks down her cheeks. I wanted to comfort her, but I needed her to hear this. I needed her to know what they'd hidden behind closed doors and family loyalty. That's enough, Roy growled. Yes, I agreed. It is? I walked to my door, opened it wide. Get out. Don't contact me again. Don't come to my work. Don't sit in my lobby. Don't send bills or guilt or threats. It's over. You can't just, I can. I did. I am. Roy moved toward me, fist clenched, but Emma suddenly stood, placing herself between us. Dad, stop. 2 words from the daughter, who still called him Dad, and Roy Holden froze like she'd slapped him. Just stop, Emma repeated. Can we just stop? The silence stretched taut as a wire. Then Roy grabbed Mom's arm, hauled her to her feet, and stormed out, but not before delivering his parting shot. You'll regret this when we lose the house. When your mother can't afford her medication, when your sister has nothing, you'll regret this. Emma lingered at the door, torn between following them and staying. I made the choice for her. Go, I said gently. But remember when you're 18, when you're ready to get out, I'll be here. She nodded once and fled. I locked the door, slid down to the floor, and finally let myself cry. Not from sadness or guilt or fear, but from relief. The account was closed. The Bank of Rachel was officially out of business. Now, I just had to survive the aftermath. The invitation arrived on expensive cardstock, addressed in Mom's careful cursive. A family dinner to celebrate Emma's new job at Target, part-time. Evenings and weekends. Minimum wage plus the employee discount. Roy was already eyeing for Christmas shopping. 3 months had passed since I'd thrown them out of my apartment. 3 months of blessed silence punctuated by the occasional guilt grenade lobbed via text or voicemail. I'd changed my phone number twice. They always found the new one. But this invitation felt different. Formal, calculated, the kind of gesture that came with strings attached and knives hidden under napkins. "Don't go," Janet advised over coffee. "It's obviously a trap." She was right. Every instinct screamed set up, but Emma had texted me separately from a friend's phone, careful not to leave digital footprints Roy could track. "Please come. I need to see you." So I went. The house looked exactly the same, beige siding, black shutters. That pretentious lion's head door knocker Roy had installed to make the place look fancier than it was. I parked on the street instead of the driveway, keys clutched between my fingers like brass knuckles. Emma answered the door. At 16, she looked older than I had at that age, stress aging her the way it did all Holden women who weren't born Holdens. She hugged me quickly, desperately, whispering, "I'm sorry," against my shoulder before Roy's voice boomed from the dining room. "Rachel's here. Family's all together again." The dining table was set with the good china. The stuff Mom had inherited from her mother and only brought out for events designed to impress or intimidate. Wine glasses at every setting, even Emma's, though hers held grape juice that looked enough like Merlot to maintain the illusion. "Sit," Roy commanded, gesturing to my old spot back to the wall, hemmed in on both sides. No easy exit. I took the chair across from him instead, keeping the table between us and my path to the door clear. Mom bustled in with a pot roast that smelled like my childhood. Before the fear settled into my bones like calcium deposits, she'd styled her hair, put on lipstick, playing the perfect hostess to hide whatever was coming. "Let's say grace," Roy announced, reaching for hands I kept firmly in my lap. "Thank you, Lord, for bringing our family together, for providing for us in times of need, for reminding us that blood is thicker than water and family always comes first." "Amen," Mom murmured. "Amen," Emma echoed, eyes on her plate. I said nothing. Dinner unfolded like a play where everyone knew their lines except me. Roy carved the roast with theatrical precision, telling stories about work that painted him as both hero and victim. Mom laughed at all the right moments, refilling wine glasses with practiced ease. Emma pushed food around her plate, occasionally catching my eye with looks that screamed apology and warning in equal measure. So, Roy finally said, setting down his fork with deliberate precision. "Let's discuss the elephant in the room. Here it comes. Your mother and I have been thinking." "Roy's been thinking," Mom corrected quietly, then flinched at his sharp look. "We've been thinking," he continued. "About the future, about family, about what's best for everyone." He pulled out a manila folder, the kind that held legal documents and life-changing disasters. My stomach clenched. "The house is underwater," he announced, as if this was news, as if they hadn't been refinancing and borrowing against equity for years, funding boats and bad investments with tomorrow's security. "The mortgage companies are threatening foreclosure." I waited. There was always more. But we found a solution. A way to keep the family together. Keep a roof over Emma's head. He slid a document across the table. "You're going to buy the house." I didn't touch the papers. "No. You haven't even looked." "I don't need to look." The answer is no. Roy's face flushed, that particular shade of red that preceded violence, but he maintained control, barely. "It's a good deal. Below market value. Your mother and I would pay rent. Help with the mortgage. Emma needs stability for her final years of high school. The house is underwater, but somehow below market value. You'd pay rent with what money? And Emma needs stability that doesn't come from financial fraud." "Watch your mouth," he growled. "Or what? You'll hit me again, in front of witnesses this time." Mom gasped. Emma sank lower in her chair, but I was done pretending. Done playing family dinner theater while they served manipulation as the main course. This is what's going to happen, Roy said, voice dropping to that dangerous register I remembered from childhood. You're going to buy this house. You're going to let us stay here. You're going to remember what family means. He smiled then, the predator's grin of someone who thought they held all the cards. Or everyone at your precious job is going to know what kind of person you really are. How you abandoned your sick mother. How you left your teenage sister to struggle. How you turned your back on the people who raised you. Is that all? The smile faltered. What? Is that all you've got? Threats to tell people a version of the truth so twisted it needs a chiropractor. Let me save you the effort. I stood, pulling out my phone. My boss knows about you. HR has your photo from when you showed up at my office. Security has strict instructions. My colleagues know I have a toxic family situation. You have no power over my reputation, because I already told the truth. Sit down, Mom pleaded. Please, Rachel, for Emma. Emma is exactly why I'm standing. Emma who deserves better than being used as an emotional hostage. Emma who could have my old room at my apartment tomorrow if she wanted it. Emma who's smart enough for college, but being told she's only worth minimum wage and family obligations. You're poisoning her against us, Roy snarled, standing too, fists clenched. No, you're poisoning her with the same lies you fed me. That she owes you for existing. That family means servitude. That love requires payment plans. The wine glass in his hand shattered against the wall behind my head. Red wine splattered like blood across Mom's pristine wallpaper. Roy! Mom shrieked. But he was already moving, coming around the table with 20 years of deferred violence in his eyes. I backpedaled toward the door, but Emma, who'd been silent and shrinking all night, suddenly erupted. Stop it! She was on her feet, tears streaming, voice raw. Just stop. I can't do this anymore. I can't watch this anymore. She turned to me, whole body shaking. He's been planning this for weeks. The papers, the threats, all of it. He said if you didn't agree, she choked on a sob. He has photos of you, edited ones. He was going to send them to your work. Post them online. Say you, Emma, shut your mouth, Roy commanded. No, she wheeled on him. I'm done being quiet. I'm done watching you hurt her. I'm done pretending this is normal. The room froze. Even Roy seemed stunned by the rebellion from his compliant daughter. The one who still called him Dad. The one he'd been grooming to replace me as the family ATM. Those photos, I said quietly, would be a crime. Revenge porn, even if edited, is a felony in this state. Add in the extortion attempt. The previous assault charges I never filed. The fraud with the car loan. Roy. You're looking at serious prison time. You wouldn't try me. The silence stretched taut. Mom wept quietly. Emma stood between us like a tiny warrior, shaking but resolute. And Roy finally looked like what he was, not a father figure or family patriarch, but a small, desperate man watching his kingdom of control crumble. Get out, he said finally. Both of you get out and don't come back. I looked at Emma. You heard him. Get your things. She's not going anywhere, Roy started. But Emma was already moving, running upstairs with the speed of someone who'd been packed for months, just waiting for permission to leave. You can't take her, Mom said through her tears. She's our daughter. She's your prisoner, and I'm done watching you choose him over your children. Emma came back with a duffel bag and her school backpack. Everything she valued crammed into 2 bags like a refugee fleeing war, which, in a way, she was. This is kidnapping, Roy threatened. This is rescue, I corrected. And if you try to stop us, if you come near either of us, if you so much as text Emma without her consent, I will bury you in legal proceedings that will make your head spin. Every assault, every threat, every forged check, every crime you thought I was too broken to document, I have it all. I opened the door, Emma beside me. The dinner was lovely, Mom. Thanks for the invitation. We left them there. Roy purple with rage. Mom sobbing into her hands. The good china still set for a family that had never really existed. In the car, Emma broke down completely. I held her while she cried, this sister I'd failed to protect for too long, and promised her what no one had ever promised me. It's over. You're safe. You never have to go back. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The envelope arrived at my office on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by courier, requiring signature confirmation. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper like some perverted gift, was the check that would change everything. $71,300. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. The Hartley Industries class action settlement. 18 months of legal proceedings for wrongful termination of their accounting department when they'd outsourced to offshore contractors. I'd been the lead plaintiff's representative, the one who'd organized the documentation, kept the group together when the company's lawyers tried to divide and conquer. The check was made out to me as the disbursement coordinator. My job was to deposit it and distribute individual settlements according to the agreed percentages. Simple routine, except, holy shit, Janet said, reading over my shoulder. That's a lot of money. It's not mine, I said automatically. I mean, only $4,200 is mine. The rest gets distributed to the other plaintiffs. But even as I said it, I remembered Roy's voice from 3 weeks ago, right after the disastrous dinner. That lawsuit money comes through. You owe me a finder's fee. That whole thing was my idea. It hadn't been. Roy had nothing to do with Hartley Industries, had never worked in accounting, had certainly never suggested I organize a class action lawsuit, but in his mind, every good thing that happened to me was somehow his achievement. His owed dividend from the investment of having housed and fed me as a teenager. Emma was at school. She'd been living with me for 3 weeks now, sleeping on my couch, doing homework at my kitchen table, learning what life looked like without constant criticism and casual violence. The adjustment hadn't been easy. She still flinched at sudden movements. Still apologized for eating food from my fridge. Still asked permission for things like showering or watching TV. You're quiet, she'd said that morning over cereal. The check comes today, right? How did you, Dad knows. He's been talking about it for weeks. Has plans for the money. Of course, he did. I locked the check in my desk drawer and spent the day in meetings, pretending to care about insurance audits while my mind raced through scenarios. Deposit it immediately. Wait, set up the disbursements, and hope Roy didn't show up demanding his imaginary cut. By 5 o'clock, I had my answer waiting in the parking garage. Roy leaned against my car, casual as a heart attack, picking his teeth with a business card, mine, I realized, probably lifted from some directory. Working late, he asked conversationally. Big shots with big money probably have big responsibilities. Move. That's no way to talk to your father. You're not my father. You're Emma's father. And you threw her out. Remember, don't come back, I believe were your exact words. His genial mask slipped. That money comes through. What money? Don't play stupid. The lawsuit. My lawsuit. Since I'm the one who told you to document everything at your first job. I almost laughed. My first job had been at Dairy Queen when I was 16. Hartley Industries had been 3 years ago, but in Roy's revisionist history, every good decision I'd ever made had been his idea. The settlement funds are held in trust, I lied smoothly. Legal disbursement takes 6 to 8 weeks. I know how these things work. Really? From your extensive experience in class action lawsuits, or from the legal expertise you gained in construction? He pushed off my car, squaring up to me. Half what? Half that settlement is mine for damages, emotional suffering from having an ungrateful daughter, loss of income from the stress, whatever you want to call it. You're delusional. Am I? Your name's on that check, right? As the responsible party. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. Be ashamed if something happened to affect your ability to distribute those funds. If questions got raised about your fitness to handle that money. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you that family takes care of family, and you owe me for 18 years of care. 18 years. Even in his threats, he inflated the debt. I'd lived under his roof for 6 years, and I'd more than paid my way. But Roy had never been good with numbers unless they worked in his favor. Get away from my car. Think about it, he said, backing away with that predator's smile. $70 grand is a lot of money. Enough to make everyone happy. Enough to make this all go away. He sauntered off, leaving me shaking with adrenaline and fury. In my purse, my phone buzzed with texts from Emma. Dad called Mom. He knows about the check. I'm scared. I drove home, breaking every speed limit, half expecting to find Roy at my apartment. But there was only Emma, curled on the couch with her homework, trying to pretend she hadn't been crying. We need to talk, I said. I told her everything. The check, the lawsuit, what the money represented, how it wasn't really mine, how I was responsible for getting it to people who'd lost their jobs, how Roy's claim was baseless but dangerous. He'll never stop, she said quietly. You know that, right? Even if you gave him half, he'd want more. It's never enough. From the mouths of babes. That night, I called my lawyer. Then I called the bank. Then I made a decision that would either free us or destroy everything. The next morning, I deposited the check, but not into the trust account I'd set up for the disbursements. Into my personal account temporarily, just long enough to make some strategic transfers, just long enough to protect what needed protecting. This is technically illegal, my lawyer warned over the phone. If anyone questions the delay in disbursements, they won't. Everyone will get their money, every penny. But I need leverage. Leverage for what? To end this once and for all. I printed out the deposit confirmation, made copies, put the original in my safety deposit box along with 18 years of documentation. Then I texted Roy from my work phone. The check arrived. We should talk. His response was immediate. Finally coming to your senses. Dinner tomorrow. Your mother wants to see you. I agreed, knowing it would be the last time I'd enter that house. The last time I'd sit at that table. The last time I'd pretend we were anything resembling a family. Emma begged to come with me. I refused. Some battles you had to fight alone. And this one had been 20 years in the making. What if he hurts you? Then you call 911 and my lawyer, in that order. But he won't. How do you know? I showed her the bank statement, the balance that would make Roy's eyes light up with greed. Because he thinks he's already won. She hugged me tight before I left. This sister I was finally able to protect. Be careful. I will. And Emma, I added, start looking at colleges, real ones, because after tomorrow, your future is yours to decide. I drove to my childhood home one last time, the deposit slip burning like a promise in my pocket. Roy wanted his pound of flesh. Fine, But he was about to learn that some debts, once paid, come with a receipt that says account closed in permanent ink. The check had come to me, and for once, just once, I was going to make sure it stayed exactly where it belonged. I spent the night before the dinner doing math, not the simple kind I did at work. This was personal archaeology, excavating 18 years of financial abuse from memory and meticulous records. Every pay stub from my Dairy Queen days. Bank statements showing deposits immediately followed by withdrawals to the family account. The notebook where 16-year-old me had tracked my hours, thinking I was saving for college. Credit card statements for Mom's medications. Roy's truck repairs. Emma's school supplies, all paid for by my accounts while Roy's beer money stayed untouched. The total came to $114,287. Plus interest, it would be closer to $150,000. The price of my stolen youth, itemized and annotated with a forensic accountant's precision. I printed everything, color copies, sorted chronologically, cross-referenced with dates of Roy's worst behavior. The time he'd taken my entire tax refund, $3,200, because family emergencies don't wait. The Christmas bonus from my first real job that disappeared into his truck payments. Every birthday and holiday where my gift to myself was keeping the lights on in their house. Emma watched from the doorway as I assembled my evidence. Is that really how much? Yes. Oh my God, Rachel. Go to bed. You have school tomorrow. How can you be so calm? I looked up from my files. Because I'm done being angry. Anger is expensive, and I've paid enough. She didn't understand. Not yet. But she would someday, when she was older and realized how much of ourselves we spend on other people's expectations. The next morning, I dressed carefully, professional blazer, the kind I wore to important audits, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. I wanted to look like what I was, a successful woman who'd crawled out of their hole, despite every attempt to bury her in it. The bank statement sat in my briefcase, showing the full $71,300 deposit. Let Roy see it. Let him salivate over money that was never going to touch his hands. Emma hugged me at the door. Text me every hour. Promise. Every hour. And if he won't. He can't afford to. Not with what he thinks is at stake. The drive felt both endless and too short. Every landmark was a memory. The gas station, where I'd counted pennies for fuel, the McDonald's where I'd worked summers to pay for their groceries, the park where I'd taken Emma when Roy's temper made the house unbearable. They were waiting on the porch like a greeting committee. Mom had dressed up, her church dress, the navy one with tiny flowers. Roy wore his only suit, the one from their wedding that still pulled across his expanding middle. Playing respectable people, with a respectable daughter coming home to discuss respectable family business. Rachel. Mom's smile was brittle as old paint. You look wonderful. Success suits you. Mom? Roy said nothing, just stepped aside to let me enter. The house smelled like pot roast again, like they thought they could recreate the last dinner's atmosphere without its explosive ending. We sat in the living room this time, neutral ground, or as neutral as anything could be in their territory. I kept my briefcase at my feet, visible but closed. Let's cut through Roy started, abandoning whatever script Mom had probably coached him on. You got the money. What's it going to take? To make this right. To be a family again. I almost laughed. We were never a family. We were a financial arrangement where I paid and paid and paid for the privilege of having nowhere else to go. Drama queen, he muttered. Always were too sensitive. Sensitive. Is that what you called it when I worked 40 hours a week at 16 to pay your bills? I pulled out my first folder. You contributed to the household. I funded the household. Second folder, Mom's medications, $400 monthly. Utilities, $300. Groceries, $500. Your truck payment. That's enough. $450 monthly for 36 months. Emma's everything, school supplies, field trips, birthday parties she never got to have because the money went elsewhere. I laid out paper after paper, building a wall of evidence on their coffee table. Mom's face went pale as the numbers added up. Roy got redder. Ancient history, he finally spat. What matters is now. That settlement money belongs to 18 people, who lost their jobs when Hartley Industries decided offshore labor was cheaper than American workers. People with families, mortgages, medical bills, real responsibilities, not manufactured ones. You're the disbursement coordinator. You control the money temporarily, with a fiduciary responsibility to distribute it according to the settlement agreement. The agreement. He slammed his hand on the table, scattering my carefully arranged papers. You owe us for what? For raising you. For putting a roof over your head. For the privilege of being your unpaid servant. For the honor of funding your lifestyle, while being told I was selfish for wanting lunch money. For the joy of being hit every time I questioned where my paychecks went. Mom flinched. Rachel, he never, stop, I corrected. Stop lying to me, to yourself, to Emma. You knew, you watched, you benefited, and you chose him every single time. That's not July 15th, 2018. I had a black eye from asking about my missing birthday money. You put concealer on it before church, and told me not to embarrass the family. Silence. October 2019. Bruised ribs from questioning the car insurance payment. You brought me ice packs and excuses. Roy stood abruptly. Enough of this. You want to play hardball. Fine. I'll go to your employer. Tell them their star auditor is stealing settlement money. How long do you think that career lasts? And there it was. The threat I'd been waiting for. The rope I'd carefully fed him until he wrapped it around his own neck. I smiled, reaching into my briefcase. Please do. In fact, I'll save you the trouble. I pulled out the bank statement, the one showing the full deposit, his eyes locked onto it like a starving man seeing steak. $71,000, he breathed. It's all there. Every penny deposited yesterday, at 9:17 a.m. Photographed and documented. The disbursement checks will be cut Monday, sent certified mail Tuesday, received by Thursday. Every plaintiff will get exactly what they are owed, to the penny, with full documentation. But right now, it's in your account under your control. Yes. So, I could do a lot of things. I could delay the disbursements. I could claim accounting errors. I could make this money dance for weeks while lawyers sort through paperwork. I leaned forward. But I won't. Because unlike you, I understand the difference between power and responsibility. Then why? To show you what you'll never have. To let you see up close the money you think you're owed. To watch you realize it was never yours and will never be yours. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. I stood, gathering my papers with practiced efficiency. The account is already set up for automatic disbursements. If anything happens to me, any accidents, any sudden illness, any unexpected legal troubles, my lawyer has instructions to expedite the process. The money goes where it belongs, and you get nothing. You can't, I can. I can. I did. It's done. I looked at Mom one last time. I left something for you on the kitchen table. Not money, you just give it to him, but something you need to see. In the kitchen, in a manila envelope marked with her name. I'd left copies of every photo documenting my injuries over the years, every medical record, every police report I'd filed and then withdrawn under pressure. The complete history of what loving Roy had cost her daughters. Goodbye, Mom. When Emma turns 18, if you want a relationship without him, you know where to find me. But only without him. That's non-negotiable. I walked past Roy, still staring at the bank statement like it held the secrets of the universe. At the door, I turned back. Oh, and Roy, I added. That fraud case with the car loan. My lawyer will be in touch. Turns out the statute of limitations hasn't run out after all. The last thing I saw before the door closed was his face cycling through rage, disbelief, and finally the dawning realization that the bank was closed. The ATM had been permanently disconnected. The check had come to me, and with it, the power to say never again and mean it. The meltdown happened faster than I'd anticipated. 2 days after the dinner, Roy showed up at Westdale Mutual during the lunch rush. I watched from my 4th floor window as security intercepted him in the lobby, his face purple with rage, arms waving wildly. Even from that distance, I could see spittle flying as he screamed about lawsuits and stolen money and ungrateful daughters. Your dad's here, Janet said, peering over my shoulder. Stepfather, I corrected, already dialing the security extension. And his trespassing. The security footage would later show Roy throwing a spectacular tantrum when informed he was banned from the premises. He kicked over a potted plant, screamed profanities that echoed through the marble lobby, and had to be physically escorted out by 2 guards while threatening to sue everyone from the CEO to the janitor. By the time I got down to the lobby to file the incident report, Roy was gone. But he'd left his mark, dirt from the overturned planter, scared receptionists, and 3 separate witnesses eager to provide statements about the unhinged man who demanded to see Rachel Holden about his money. He said you stole from him, the head of security informed me, reviewing his notes. Something about a settlement that belongs to him. The Hartley Industries settlement is being dispersed according to court orders, I said calmly. My stepfather has no claim to it. Despite his delusions, he's been harassing me about money for years. We'll need to formalize the no trespass order, and I'd recommend alerting local law enforcement. Already done. What I didn't tell him was that I'd been expecting this, that I'd warned my team, briefed HR, and had my lawyer on speed dial. Roy's public explosion was exactly what I needed, documented, witnessed, undeniable proof of his instability. Emma was doing homework when I got home, but the tear tracks on her face told a different story. He called 17 times, she said, gesturing to her silenced phone. Mom called 23 times. They are losing it. Block them. I did. They are using different numbers, grandmas, neighbors. I think Dad even borrowed a phone from his AA sponsor. I sat beside her, looking at the stream of messages. They ranged from pleading to threatening to completely unhinged. One from Mom simply said, "How could you do this to us?" over and over, like a broken record of maternal guilt. "We can change your number." No, Emma's voice was firm. I want them to see that I'm not answering, that I'm choosing not to answer. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. The power in being unreachable by choice, rather than circumstance. There's something else, she said, pulling up a Facebook post. Dad's taking it public. Roy had written a manifesto, 3,000 words of vitriol about ungrateful children, elder abuse, and stolen inheritance. He tagged every relative we had, included carefully edited snippets of our story, and painted himself as a devoted father betrayed by the daughters he'd raised. The comments were already piling up, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years expressing shock, church friends offering prayers, his drinking buddies volunteering to talk sense into me. It's actually perfect, I said, screenshotting everything. Perfect. Libel, defamation, harassment. He's building my case for me. But the real escalation came the next morning. I was reviewing settlement checks, ensuring every amount was correct before Monday's mailing, when reception called. Ms. Halden. There are some people here claiming to be conducting an audit. My blood chilled. From where? They say they are from the state attorney's office. Something about settlement fund misappropriation. Roy had actually done it. He'd filed a complaint about the money. I met them in the conference room, two investigators, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, going through the motions of a complaint they clearly found dubious. We received a report that you've misappropriated funds from the Hartley Industries settlement, the lead investigator said, not quite meeting my eyes. The complainant claims you've stolen money intended for other plaintiffs. I see. I pulled out my prepared files. Here are the original settlement documents. Here's the distribution list approved by the court. Here are the cancelled checks showing the initial deposit. And here are the cashier's checks, ready for certified mailing on Monday, exactly as scheduled. They reviewed everything with increasing relief. Every I dotted, every T crossed, every penny accounted for. The complainant seemed very invested in this matter, the second investigator noted carefully. Claimed to be your father, stepfather. And yes, he's very invested in money that isn't his. Would you like to see the restraining order, or the documentation of his previous attempts to extort money from me? By the time they left with apologies and assurances that the complaint would be marked as unfounded, I provided enough documentation to bury Roy and his own accusations. But he wasn't done. That evening, Emma and I were eating takeout when we heard it, shouting from the parking lot. Roy's voice, drunk and belligerent, echoing off the apartment buildings. Rachel, I know you're up there. You owe me. Emma grabbed her phone to record. I grabbed mine to call 911. You think you're better than us? You're nothing without me. Neighbors were opening windows, peering out. Someone yelled at him to shut up. He responded with profanity and threats. Get in the bathroom, I told Emma. Lock the door. What are you going to do? Nothing. Let him undo himself. The police arrived within minutes. Benefits of living in a decent neighborhood. From my window, I watched them approach Roy, who was now kicking at the building's entrance door. That's my daughter, he slurred. She stole from me. $70,000. I want her arrested. The officers, having already been briefed on the restraining order when I called, were unimpressed. The breathalyzer test, even less so. Sir, you're under arrest for public intoxication, violation of a restraining order, and attempted breaking and entering. I'll sue all of you. That money is mine. She owes me. They cuffed him as he continued screaming, his words becoming increasingly incoherent. Mom sat in their car, visible through the windshield, hands over her face. She didn't get out, didn't try to calm him, just sat there as they loaded him into the police car, another mess she'd pretend not to see. Emma emerged from the bathroom once the sirens faded. Is it over? No, but we're getting closer. I pulled up the settlement distribution on my laptop, showing her the pending transfers. Monday morning, this money goes where it belongs. Every person getting what they are owed, what they worked for, what they deserve. And Roy. I clicked to the note field next to his name because, yes, I'd checked if he was somehow connected to any plaintiff. He wasn't. Roy gets exactly what he earned. Nothing. Emma smiled for the first time in days. That seems fair. More than fair. It's justice. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Bail hearing is tomorrow. He'll probably be released. Be ready. I was ready. I'd been ready since I was 15 years old, keeping receipts for money I'd never see again. Now those receipts were Roy's undoing. Evidence of a pattern of abuse that no amount of fatherly posturing could erase. The check had come to me, and with it, the power to finally say enough. No more payments, no more guilt, no more pretending that love came with a price tag I'd never finish paying. The bank of Rachel was closed permanently. The next morning, Roy made bail. Mom posted it. Of course, using the house as collateral, the same house he tried to manipulate me into buying. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all the universe's cosmic joke department. By noon, they were at my door, not knocking, not ringing the bell, just standing there like ghosts of guilt past. Roy still in yesterday's clothes. Mom clutching her purse like a life preserver. Emma watched from behind me as I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. The restraining order, I started. Doesn't take effect until Monday, Roy interrupted, waving papers that looked suspiciously like he'd grabbed them from the courthouse trash. I checked. He hadn't. It was already in effect. But I let him talk, my phone recording in my pocket. Last chance, he said, trying for authoritative but achieving desperate. Drop the charges. Give me what I'm owed. We all walk away. What you're owed? I repeated. Tell me, Roy, what exactly do you think you're owed? Respect, gratitude, compensation for raising you. You mean for taking my paychecks? For using me as unpaid labor? For hitting me when I asked questions? Mom flinched. She always flinched, but she never left. I gave you a home. You gave me trauma. There's a difference. You ungrateful little, he stepped forward. I stepped back, keeping the door between us. Careful, I warned. Threaten me again, and that bail money posted becomes a donation to the county. His face went through several shades of purple before settling on defeated grey. For the first time in 20 years, Roy Halden looked old. Not wise old or distinguished old, but worn-out old, used-up old, the kind of old that comes from spending decades being angry at everyone except yourself. The money's gone, isn't it? He said finally. You already sent it. First thing this morning, overnight delivery. Every plaintiff will have their check by tomorrow. And my finder's fee. I laughed. Actually laughed. Your finder's fee for a lawsuit about a company you never worked for. Regarding people you've never met. For work you never did. That finder's fee, Mom finally spoke. Her voice barely a whisper. Rachel, please. The house is not my problem. Nothing about your life is my problem anymore. But we're family. No, I corrected. Emma and I are family. You're just people I used to know. Roy's final card was exactly what I'd expected, pure, unfiltered rage. I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone what kind of person you are. You'll do nothing. I cut him off because while he was planning his dramatic revenge, I was documenting everything. Every threat, every assault, every stolen penny, it's all filed with my lawyer, the police, and a few other interested parties. Touch me, Emma, or our lives in any way, and it all goes public. The real story, not your Facebook fiction. I pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared for this moment. Here's your copy. Every receipt, every photo, every piece of evidence showing exactly what kind of man you are. Take it, frame it, use it as a reminder of why your daughters want nothing to do with you. He didn't take it, just stood there deflating like a punctured tire. Come on, Mom said quietly, tugging at his arm. Let's go. This isn't over. Yes, she said firmly, surprising all of us. It is? She looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time in years. "I'm sorry." 2 words, 20 years too late, but something. They left without another word. Roy shuffling like a beaten man. Mom still clutching her purse like it contained the ashes of her choices. I watched them drive away in the truck my teenage paychecks had maintained and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just empty space where obligation used to live. "Is it really over?" Emma asked. "Yeah, it really is." The rest happened quickly. Roy pled no contest to the charges. His lawyer probably explained that fighting them would only expose more dirty laundry, 6 months probation, mandatory anger management, and a permanent restraining order that covered both Emma and me. Mom filed for divorce 2 months later, quietly, without drama, like she'd finally run out of energy for pretending. She moved in with her sister in Michigan. We exchanged Christmas cards that first year, generic, store-bought, signatures only. It was more than I'd expected, less than a daughter should want. But it was honest. Finally, Emma thrived without Roy's voice telling her she was worthless. She discovered she was brilliant. Full scholarship to Ohio State, pre-med track, a future unlimited by someone else's limitations. She kept my last name, our real last name, Morrison, when she turned 18. "You saved me," she said the day she left for college. "You saved yourself." I just opened the door. And me? I kept my job, my sanity, and for the first time in my life, my money. Every penny earned was mine to save, spend, or set on fire if I wanted. The freedom was intoxicating. I never spoke to Roy again. Heard through the family grapevine that he moved to Florida, got remarried to another woman with a daughter, started the cycle over. I thought about warning her. Then I remembered, you can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can only save yourself. The Hartley settlement became something of a legend in our industry. 18 people got their money, down to the penny, on time, despite attempted interference. My reputation as someone who could handle complex disbursements under pressure opened doors I'd never imagined, promotions, opportunities, a life built on my own terms. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. It was Emma calling to talk about her day without fear in her voice. It was my bank balance growing without mysterious withdrawals. It was sleeping through the night without waiting for the other shoe to drop. It was learning that family isn't about blood or obligation or who raised you. It's about who shows up when you're building your life, not just when they need something from it. Roy was right about one thing, the check did come to me, but not as his windfall, or his finder's fee, or his delayed payday for basic parenting. It came as evidence that I'd survived him, that I'd built something from the rubble of a childhood spent paying for the crime of existing. That every dollar I'd handed over, every bruise I'd hidden, every dream I'd deferred had led to this moment. Standing in my own apartment, my sister safe, my future secure, and my hands finally, blessedly empty of other people's bills. The check came to me, and with it, the knowledge that some debts can't be collected, some accounts can't be settled, and some banks are better off closed. I kept the deposit slip, framed it even, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. The check came to me, and for once, I didn't hand it over. This is not revenge. This is correction. And that correction, it was worth every penny I'd ever lost. Because you can't put a price on freedom. But if you could, it would be exactly $71,300. The amount that showed me I was worth more than the sum of someone else's demands. The Bank of Rachel Holden was closed, but the Bank of Rachel Morrison, that was finally open for business. My business. Nobody else's. The Bank of Rachel Holden was closed, but the Bank of Rachel Morrison, that was finally open for business. My business. Nobody else's. And if you really want to help more people discover stories like this one, hit the like button to boost this video. Your support means everything. Until next time.